Alright, I wanted to come on and review a Christmas gift that I got, and that is the PC Engine Complete Guide, a informational book about the entire PC Engine era in Japan. And it's a nice little book, retails for around 2,100 yen, or at least that's what is on the cover. Looking at eBay and Playage and stuff like that, I think it goes for between $30 and $40. Depending on where you find it. It's a nice little book, kind of a newsstand quality book, something you'd buy for quick nostalgia. And I really had a blast going through this, of course completely in Japanese, but you can see it lists all of the hardware for the PC Engine here at the outset. And as a Turbo-Grafx 16 owner back in the day, of course, I had seen some of these devices in EGM and other publications, and I always wondered, what was out there in Japan, and kind of gives you a nice little rundown of that. Starts off with the hue cards, and what I like, it gives you the box cover, it gives you the picture of the actual hue card, the opening screen, which allows you in some cases to figure out what these games are, as far as some of them have Japanese text on the box, but an English title. And then you get these little, look at this. There's apparently a Sharp computer that could play PC Engine software. I didn't know that. Those little interesting tidbits are found around this book. There's not a lot of information. It's always 4 screenshots. And of course, text in Japanese, although not a lot of it. You do have to have some very, very basic Japanese skills here to make use of this. Basic words, knowledge of katakana and hiragana to figure out some of the titles, figure out some of the information. But overall, you don't need to be fluent in Japanese to enjoy this book. You got Fire Pro Wrestling. And it's just a wonderful walk down memory lane for this great console. And of course, a fair number of these games were released here in the US, so you can enjoy that. What I, of course, can't read, you have these little, this is section 2, and it talks about the different types of software that was released. It goes chronologically from the late 80s through to the mid-90s, and it has these little section separators that talk about some aspect of PC Engine culture. In this case, the Japanese PC Engine magazines. And, I guess I knew they existed, but I hadn't really thought about them. And I went on to eBay, and boy, were these things expensive. So continuing on, it really does list, I believe, every game, as far as I can tell. And some interesting ones that, you forget about. Power Drift. I have discovered some games that I didn't realize came out. I'll point out a few as we get into the CD era. But, there is some page gloss, as you can see here. We are in 1990, so we'll skip ahead a little bit into 91. We'll get to the CDs, you can see. Jump back here. Some of the CD software that was coming out. I just lost that page. And again, talking about laser active add-ons. I love these little, hardware descriptions. What is that? Magical Chase. Super Graphics. It has a section on the ill-fated Super Graphics. And you can see when it gets to the CD section, that'll give you a picture of the actual CD-ROM. And of course, the box cover. And it's just, it's really good stuff. If you are a fan of this system, it's a good book to have. And certainly, especially as you go through the CDs, which are still fairly easy to emulate if you have the right emulator. I've always used Magic Engine, and I'd like to pick up some of these titles. Some of them are still cheap, some of them are really expensive. I didn't know, for example, this Ultra Box. I had never heard of those games. They look like, there's some Mahjong games, there's some quasi-adult themed stuff that they talk about, puzzle games, things like that. I'd like to pick those up, especially the Mahjong game if it's not so expensive. But it's a good resource, as you can see. It's a little, I would say, bland in its presentation. Some other peripherals, and I actually want to get to the back after you get through the whole CD-ROM era. And of course, if you've played a lot of these games, as you flip through, they will kind of activate the memories that you have of these. And I have played a lot of these Japanese games because, through emulation, through importing these CDs, I do have a reasonable collection. And again, you have something on Tokimeki Memorial, which was obviously a big game. They had something about Street Fighter in here somewhere. As you get to the end of the book, sorry about this as I skip over some things. What I really like here at the end, the peripherals section, and you can see all the different arcade card converters. Pages sticking together here. Really all the different stuff. Karaoke microphone, external speakers. Who knew that some of this stuff was available? All the different controllers, and then at the end, the index really going through the titles, prices, release dates, things like that. So, this is a good book. This is for, well, I don't know how much this cost because I got it as a gift, but, if you want to import it for $30 and just have a nice little, almost pocket-sized trip down PC Engine memory lane, it is enjoyable. Although it makes me want to see something like this in English, talking about the obscure Japanese games, talking about the U.S. releases, the U.S. hardware. And then, you know what? Going through all of this, it makes me hope, and perhaps, this is unrealistic, but that someone will put out the entire PC Engine library, all the CD games, all the HuCard games, in one or two collections. It's probably too much to translate all the Japanese games, but just throw them in there, give us a little description, maybe have some sort of community-driven translation functionality where if someone was so inclined, they could translate the Far East of Eden series, which is something that I've always wanted to play in English, but it just kind of activates a lot of nostalgia for the console. And it was a great console. PC Engine really coming in at the end of the Japanese bubble economy, competing aggressively with Nintendo, really capturing, in a certain sense, the late 80s, early 90s otaku culture, getting a lot of those sort of games on there. And then also things like Street Fighter, which we never got. There were a lot of really good games for this system that we didn't get. And I think this is just a nice way to relive those days. And I would encourage people to go out and find and emulate some of these obscure Japanese games because it's fun and it gives you a greater appreciation for this console than you might have had if you were just a Turbo-Grafx 16 owner. So there you have it. PC Engine, complete guide, reasonably priced, very good little book about the console, and I do recommend it.